They only made 80 of these in 1968, and we've got one of the nicest ones in existence on Muscle Car of the Week. It's a 1968 Corvette with the L88 427 under the hood. (1968) was the first year for the third generation Corvette, now commonly known as the C3 cars. They're much longer looking, they're lower and sleeker looking than the earlier ones, but we were very happy to learn that they carried over the L88 427 option package that was started in 1967. Now this Corvette is the baddest of the bad. The L88 package was originally available in '67. They only put it in about 20 cars. For 1968, it found its way into just 80 cars. And this one in particular is a very, very exceptional version. It's a LeMans Blue convertible with a removable vinyl grained hardtop. And the L88 package wasn't about getting a lot of luxurious options and niceties in a car. It was about going fast. And for '68, you could get a couple different 427 cubic inch V8s, but the L88 was definitely the king of the hill. Being fast on the racetrack was extremely important to Chevrolet in the '60s, as it is now, but back then the big threat came in the form of the 427 Shelby Cobra. So that's primarily why the 427 V8 ended up in the Corvette in a high-performance version. And you could go to your local Chevrolet dealer and buy an L71 Corvette, which had a 427, made 435 horsepower, used 3 Holley carburetors, had cast iron heads, about 11.5 to 1 compression. It was a good, powerful engine. But to really turn things up a whole bunch of clicks, you could check off the box for the L88. And the L88 was also a 427, but that's where the similarities ended, because this one had aluminum heads, it had a much higher 12.5 to 1 compression ratio, it had an aluminum intake manifold with a single 850 CFM Holley carburetor on it, it had a mechanical camshaft with over ½ inch lift on both the intake and exhaust. It was a long duration camshaft, had a transistorized ignition, and what that meant is Chevrolet actually advertised the L88 427 at making 430 horsepower and 485 foot-pounds of torque. Now that horsepower number was actually a bit less than the L71 435 horsepower. Now the trick here is that the L71 427 actually had a higher horsepower rating than the L88, 435 horsepower versus 430 of the L88. So you think, well, what's the deal? The L88 is supposed to be the bad boy. Higher compression, bigger camshaft, better cylinder heads, bigger carburetor. Well, the truth was that that 435 horsepower L71 was rated at 5,800 RPM, and the L88, the bad boy motor, was rated at 430 horsepower, but at a low 4,600 RPM. So many people think that the L88 at its higher RPM limit was up 500 horsepower, 520. It's kind of hard to say. Some say as high as 560. All we know is that these things scream, and this is a super rare, super nice Corvette. It's interesting to look at this particular car because the LeMans Blue color with the medium blue interior, it looks, I mean, it almost looks like a luxury car. It's kind of a peaceful color, but man, that hood is the dead giveaway that it's got the L88 engine, because the hood was specific to these cars. And the L88 engine itself is just chock full of performance parts. Starting at the bottom, it's got a forged crankshaft, it's got special connecting rods, it's got forged pistons, 12.5 to 1 compression ratio, solid mechanical camshaft, 558 inches of intake lift, 580 inch exhaust, long duration, and that combined to make about 1,000 RPM idle was the setting on this. So they didn't idle very slow because this thing wanted to go. It had an aluminum intake manifold, it had aluminum cylinder heads, it had an 800 CFM carburetor on top. It was designed to pump air and make power, and that's what these cars did. You can tell that vinyl tops were all the rage back in '68. This is the Corvette's removable hardtop, but even it has been upholstered in the black vinyl. Very cool. Contrasting the stunning blue paint is a red stripe tire with a silver Corvette rally wheel. It almost looked patriotic, you know, it's kind of a red, white, and blue color combination. It's funny to see how many parts that are deemed Corvette parts people, you know, seek out for other projects. Corvette motor, Corvette rallies, Corvette brakes. This thing's got it all. It's kind of funny that Chevrolet really didn't want these cars to be in the hands of the general public. They wanted to build a car you could buy and go race if you were a legitimate race car driver. So they changed the options around inside the car so that it would kind of discourage people that wanted a comfortable, quiet Corvette. For example, there's no heater in an L88. There's no radio in an L88. They do have power brakes, which was interesting, but I think that's because all the L88 cars had heavy-duty brakes, heavy-duty suspension, 15x7 rally wheels. So in order to just drive this thing around, the power brakes certainly helped. But again, this was not a car that was designed to be driven every day to work. This was designed to be taken from the Chevrolet dealer, sticker it up with letters and numbers, and change the wheels and tires and go racing. Behind the 427 was a mandatory Muncie M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed transmission, and these came with a 355-to-1 rear gear, although you could get them ranging in a bunch of different gear ratios by special order. This also had the F41 performance suspension, which was a rear sway bar and a larger diameter front sway bar, so that your Corvette was, you know, pretty much ready to hit the road course as soon as you bought it. The L88 is truly a special car. They only made them for 3 years, 67, 8, and 9. The production numbers were increased each year, so there's more 69s than 8s than 7s. But I think this car is super, super sharp. I've always been a fan of the early third generation Corvettes, and not only does it look super, super sweet, this thing's got the performance to back it up. And back in the late 60s, magazines tested these things going 0 to 60 in the mid 4-second range, 0 to 100 in the mid 8-second range. You know, just screaming performers. And there's a handful of these cars in the Brothers collection, but I think this one's my personal favorite. Nice. Wow. Well, we've got more pictures of this car on our website at MuscleCarOfTheWeek.com, and we have a Facebook page where you can follow along and share these cool cars with your friends. And if you want, you can go to our YouTube page and subscribe, because you'll be updated whenever we post a new killer muscle car for Muscle Car of the Week.